Depending on the part of the internet you've been on recently, you might have heard about Japan Fighting Game Publisher Roundtable. So what the heck is a Japan Fighting Game Publishers Roundtable? 6 developers, specifically 6 Japanese fighting game developers, including Arc System Works, Arika, Bandai Namco, Capcom, Koei Tecmo, and SNK are getting together for this publisher roundtable. A lot of people have been running wild, as they do, about potential video game announcements or DLC announcements. Specifically, I've seen a lot of people talking about next-gen fighting games, potential trailers for already announced games like Guilty Gear Strive and all of the sorts. Guys, there is nothing pointing towards this at all. I wasn't even going to make a video about this, but I want to set people's expectations. Bandai Namco tweeted about this event. They said, "The titans of the Japanese fighting game industry sit down to discuss the past, present, and future of fighting games." Sounds to me like they're just going to be talking to each other, kind of like a podcast. Arc System Works made their very own tweet about it as well, and that tweet didn't hint at any video game announcements, and there's no hint of any negativity in this tweet at all. It simply just says that Daisuke and Kazuto will be featured on a panel. Based on the information that we have currently available about this roundtable, I don't think there's a reason to believe that this is anything other than a podcast with a potential Q&A. Now, as a result of this, there might be a couple DLC announcements, maybe some hints at future projects, but don't expect any bombshells here. Definitely don't expect any huge Arc System Works announcements, and definitely don't expect anything anime related. I could see some Tekken news or some Soul Calibur news getting announced here. I looked through some of the Japanese posts about this event, and those Japanese posts, depending on how you interpret it, you can kinda end up in a way that it sounds like that Harada has something to announce. Harada's the lead developer for Tekken, but for the most part, go into this with some pretty tame expectations. With that said, I wanted to do my due diligence as a content creator and as somebody who covers news in this industry, and I wanted to look into all of the people involved in this panel and give us a better idea of what they could be talking about. Obviously, all the names I'm going to be reading are in Japanese. I do not speak Japanese, and I might butcher somebody's name, and I sincerely apologize for that. I promise I will try my best. There are going to be 2 developers from SNK, Yasuyuki Oda, and Nobuyuki Hiroki. From Koei Tecmo, we have Yoichi Mibori. From Arika, we have Arika. And I mentioned all of these people separately because they're not involved in any company or any project that I cover on this channel. Now we're going to start going into a bit more depth when it comes to each of these individual people. From Capcom, we have Street Fighter V producer Shuhei Matsumoto. He's been involved in MVCI, so if you're hoping for an MVC announcement or a Street Fighter 6, maybe. Honestly, I don't think that's happening, but at least he was a producer on the current Street Fighter game, so we've got that going for you, I guess. Also from Capcom, we have Takayuki Nakayama, who was the chief director of Street Fighter V and has worked on a large list of Capcom games that we won't bother going down, but he's been in that company for a while. From Bandai Namco, we have the legendary Harada. You can't help but love Harada. Harada is, of course, a director and a producer for Tekken. He's also done a lot of the behind-the-scenes work marketing at Bandai Namco. He's worked on stuff like One's Justice and Shinobi Striker, at least as far as the marketing side is concerned. So he knows his stuff not just about fighting games, but also about the industry at large. If he was to announce something, I'd have to guess that it would be a new Tekken release or a Tekken DLC or something like that. But again, I wouldn't hold my breath. Also from Bandai Namco, we have Motohiro Okuba. He's produced games like Tekken and Soul Calibur, and he's done a bit of marketing here and there also at Bandai Namco. Of course, Arc System Works is going to be at the event. I saw PS360 make a couple jokes about Naruto fighters, and I'm fairly confident he's just joking about that, or at the very least, he's just trying to wish things into existence. But in case you're one of the people who actually think we're getting Naruto fighters here, don't. It's just not happening. Daisuke Ishiwatari is, of course, the lead design at Guilty Gear, and he will be at this event. Kazuto Sekine will also be involved. Kazuto Sekine is a person with a plan. They've been a lead planner for Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, Guilty Gear Rev 2, and I'm guessing they are also working on Guilty Gear Strive. Interestingly, nobody from Arc System Works Team Blue is going to be appearing at the event. That's kind of crazy to me. Now, I know Team Blue doesn't have anything new coming out, so it kind of makes sense. But on the other hand, Team Blue is like a big part of Arc System Works. Team Blue, for those who don't know, is the team that make the sprite games like Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle, and a lot of that team works on mobile games now. And I know the lead developer of Blaze Blue has expressed interest in possibly making 3D games now, not necessarily like 3D movement, but like using 3D models as opposed to 2D sprites. And perhaps maybe whatever he's working on now is at Team Red instead of Team Blue. But it's still surprising to see him or somebody from Team Blue just not be involved at this event. It's kind of crazy. They're a big part of the industry. As far as games I expect to be announced here, I expect nothing. Now, when I say I expect nothing, I mean I'm not going into this event expecting any video game announcements. There's a chance that we will get video game announcements, and I would say if we're going to get video game announcements, the best bet would be that it's probably going to come from one of the Bandai Namco teams. And when I say the Bandai Namco teams, I don't mean a Naruto Fighters. I mean something from Harada, or I mean something from Motohiro Okubo. I definitely don't mean that we're going to get a Naruto game or some anime game. I just don't think it's happening. I don't think there's a good reason to believe it would happen here, even if it was going to happen. Based on the public words we've gotten about this event, it sounds like it's just going to be a bunch of developers talking about the industry that they're involved in. And there are a lot of issues in the fighting game community to talk about right now. Issues that only developers can answer, specifically issues that only Japanese developers can answer, because the Western developers have been taking care of problems like this. The problems that I'm speaking to are, of course, Netcode. Netcode is a huge issue in fighting games, and it's incredible that it's taken a world pandemic for us to finally respond to some of the network issues in fighting games, because the vast majority of people play fighting games at home anyway, so we should have been addressing these issues a long time ago. It's incredible that Dragon Ball FighterZ does not have any type of rollback netcode, and the same thing goes for most Japanese fighting games. I would play way more Grand Blue Fantasy Versus if that thing played okay online, but it just doesn't. It can on a stable connection sometimes. There are also plenty of other issues to talk about. I want to hear what Japanese fighting game developers think about free-to-play as a monetization system. I want to hear what Japanese fighting game developers think about, I want to hear what they think about multiple seasons of DLC instead of the traditional one season of DLC or even 0 seasons of DLC that they used to do. You got to remember, it wasn't that long ago that fighting games would just do multi-releases. They would do like a gold edition or something like that that had new characters in the game, and you would just be forced to purchase the new game. There was a time where we didn't used to get things like arcade mode and a free update. You had to pay for it. I want to hear fighting game developers in Japan talk about trying to make it easier for fighting game players, new fighting game players, to jump into the genre and really experience it the same way that someone's been playing for years experiences it. And I know we've talked a little bit about what games we could expect some of these people to be working on, but remember, not a single public word about this event from Bandai Namco, Arc System Works, or even the Japanese Tekken Twitter hinted at even there being a little bit of news here. Again, there was that one tweet that I talked about where you can kind of interpret that maybe Harada has something up his sleeve, but based on the public word of the people behind this event, this is simply a roundtable podcast-esque discussion thing. And personally, I think that's super cool. I love the idea because I love listening to people talk about this industry. So for the love of all things that we care for, please, when we watch this event live and we realize that this is not some E3 replacement but for fighting games, I don't want to see you in the chat, in the YouTube chat or the Twitch chat or the whatever chat, spamming about how bad this event is. I don't want to see you complaining on Twitter afterwards when we didn't get Naruto Fighters, because that's just not what this event is for. If it turns out to be something you didn't want, that doesn't mean the event was bad. It just means it wasn't what you wanted. Sorry to end on that sour note. It just makes me a little bit sad because I love the idea of this event. I want to hear these developers talk about what they have to say. Of course, if there are any big announcements coming out of this event, you can probably expect to hear me talk about it right here on youtube.com/Bilbzy. Thank you so much for watching this video. My name has been Bilbzy, and I'll be sure to catch you in the next one.